Hello, we're just going to give a couple of seconds here for people to go ahead and join in. All right, how is everyone doing today? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from today. Today, we have our very own Stephen Banbury talking about power of partnerships. Grow your B2B success with co-marketing. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to everyone who's taken the time out of their busy schedules, out of their day to join us today. I'm excited that joining me today on today's webinar from Minneapolis is HubSpot Senior Core Partner Development Manager, Justin Kallberg. Welcome.
Thank you.
Justin, it's great to have you here today. I'm looking forward to this next sort of 30 minutes or so. But perhaps before we start, you can take a couple of minutes, a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the quick intro. I appreciate the invite to be part of this. I am Justin Kallberg. I'm a senior core partner development manager with HubSpot based here in Minneapolis. Partnerships are something that are near and dear to my heart, so really excited to be here today. I've been with HubSpot for 2 years now and really have been, prior to being at HubSpot, was a partner of HubSpot. And prior to that was at a software startup where I helped build a partner program from the ground up. And really, it all tailors back to partnerships, really, I know are a key to scaling business and a key to really being aligned with the right folks to affect change and really further your mission as a company. So super excited to dig in today.
That's great. Thanks so much, Justin. So, for everyone on today's webinars, if you have any questions that you might have for us, please put them in the chat, and we'll absolutely do our best to answer them as we go through this. Let me get into the slideshow. And so, I according to a survey, Justin, right?
Yeah.
On the state and future of partnerships, and this was done by Partnerize and WBR Research.
Mhm.
They said that over half of companies say partnerships generate 20% or more of their company's revenue. So I guess my question to you is like, should we be surprised about how big the contribution is from the partner ecosystem, or you're like, no, we shouldn't be surprised at all?
I mean, I think personally, I'm surprised it's not a bigger number than this, just because of my tie-in with the partner world. How many partners I know that a lot of their makeup and a lot of what they do has a partner associated with it. But I think this is probably when you really step back and think about companies holistically, 54% say that partnerships generate 20% or more of the revenue. It's not shocking whatsoever.
Mhm.
With rev share and profit share, revenue share and commissions on different deals, I think it aligns really well with just some alternative revenue streams for companies. So it's not a shock at all that this is a stat that we would find pretty easily.
Yeah, so if companies aren't doing it today, then obviously they should really be considering doing it. And then perhaps when we go through this, we'll also be discussing kind of best practices. But for people that do have partnerships, what are kind of the gotchas and best practices to even generate even more revenue
Yeah.
through these partner channels? And in my experience, Justin, people use the term partner marketing and co-marketing somewhat interchangeably.
Yep.
And I'd suggest that partner marketing is like the broader term with co-marketing sort of a function of it. So, I mean, from your vantage point, how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think partner marketing and kind of partnerships are the overarching relationship, and I think co-marketing is a tactical piece of that puzzle, and the co-marketing end of it really allows for, I mean, a lot of the things that are laid out here of, campaign focus, shared content, mutual promotion, cost sharing, lead sharing. So I think co-marketing is how we drive a lot of business for both parties in the partnership. And that's where that co-marketing piece can really bring in that mutually beneficial, both parties are pushing towards a common goal. Whereas partner marketing is a lot of I think the onus is more on the partner within some of that, but like really that long-term collaboration. So I think you can have partner marketing without co-marketing, but you can't have co-marketing really without the partner marketing end of the actual relationship. So I think co-marketing is a little more visible to the buying public, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a really good distinction too. So, and obviously, when we look at sort of examples of co-marketing, so there are plenty of activities
Mm.
that business can collaborate on. And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned, and we can dig into all of these, a few that have been successful for HubSpot and for you in prior roles, from sort of the different types of events, because there are obviously multitude of different events, and you actually spent some time talking about sort of the LinkedIn advertising, which I thought was like pretty interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, throughout the kind of the list that we've got here on the co-marketing basics, um, each one of these has really, I think, pertinent pieces to all of this. From a LinkedIn standpoint, I think when you've got alignment with a partner and the company that you're partnering with, both parties are pushing the messaging together. It shows this unity amongst, folks that are working together towards that common goal of delivering great service day in and day out via partnership. I think it's huge. In the past, I've had great success. The software startup I was at, we did a ton of webinars where we did a lot of co-marketing with different partners that we worked with, and really being able to reach both audiences made such a big difference. And then, some of the things that we did that I think moved the needle a ton were in-person events as well, where I would go as a representative of my company. I would go with a partner to an event that they might have been hosting, or a trade show or a conference they were at, and go spend time in their booth with them, where I was there to really highlight them as a partner, but at the same time we could talk about how we work together and how that affects change for our shared customers.
Yeah. The I mean, I guess with that we should probably sort of dive into spend some time talking about the benefits, Justin. So um, it's probably no surprise to you that expanded reach is on the top of this list, right? So access to partners, audience, etc. So maybe you can walk us through, and I can pile on top with some other thoughts as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, as we were running through the practice run on this yesterday, just looking and talking through these and thinking on the different benefits. I mean, these are so common sense, but the reality is they're vital to a great partnership. So, and that's a lot of the reasons why you do it, the expanded reach. I mean, I could go and pull a list out of, a sourcing type software, and I could cold call a ton of people, or I could go talk to a company that happens to have a great captive audience. And then by being associated, a prime example being associated with EMA, that gives me essentially a couple steps ahead if I were to go, like, we co-market something together. It brings instant credibility within that audience. Cost efficiency, it's going to be far less expensive to market to a captive audience that's already there. And, I just hit on the enhanced credibility, but when we can leverage each other's networks and reputation and really put each other in a great light, and, it's mutually beneficial at that point because it gives you that enhanced credibility. So we've all done sales at some point. We've all probably had a cold call made to us, or we've called somebody, and establishing credibility is one of the toughest things to do. And when there's no trust, because there's not a track record, it's really hard to build that quickly. And partnerships help, I think, expedite that entire process. And then, the content diversity is going to be a huge one as well. So, EMA is going to be able to do things that HubSpot may not be the best at, and vice versa, and be able to combine those together and bring the best of both sides, or best of, multiple partners together. I think it allows for really concise messaging and a great delivery. And the people that end up winning the most are the customers.
I think building on that sort of expanded reach, it allows you to explore maybe new markets and customer segments, which maybe weren't there before, sort of increasing your market share. And
Yep.
around some credibility, you could add maybe increased brand awareness
Yep.
because you're associating those two trusted brands together, which to your point enhances credibility. I've seen that previously with work I've done like McAfee, with some of the partnerships we had there with whether it's Dell, eMachines, Toshiba, and others.
Yep.
Um, and then, I mean, this is an obvious one, Justin, but actually building relationships
Mhm.
that sort of just start going beyond co-marketing. So you end up potentially with like long-term strategic partnerships. So,
Yep.
fostering trust and cooperation between those initial campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the relational end of it, I mean, you can have a successful partnership where there's not a deep human relationship.
Mm.
Obviously, you can have that. But I think the partnerships that withstand the test of time and have the best success are the ones where there is a level of relationship between both parties and both sides. Um, I have a partner that I used to work with years ago who actually attended my wedding, and we got to know each other through our partnership. Like we ended up becoming great friends out of it. Um, Still to this day, we don't, they're not a HubSpot partner, but still to this day, we brainstorm on a lot of ideas and different elements. And I think that's the beauty of a partnership is that it goes far beyond just what you see in front of you today and it can have lasting impact on both sides and both companies.
Yeah. The I guess the next question is where to start.
Yeah.
So, you know, what are the key steps in developing a co-marketing experience? And to me, it always starts with choosing the right partner, the right for me partner. Looking for companies that share your target audience, but obviously are not direct competitors, although I have been in situations where there's that co-opetition. Um, and ensuring that the partnership is mutually beneficial and aligns with those company values. So, Justin, when in your role as a partner development, and I know you're dealing with sort of like the gold standard of partnerships over at HubSpot, like, what does finding the right partner mean for you?
Yeah, I think so. The way that we're set up internally at HubSpot, we actually have a partner specialist team that goes out and they work really hard to find agencies or companies that could be a good fit as a HubSpot partner. There's a lot of check boxes that go into that, and you don't have to check every box to be a good fit partner. Um, I've been kind of, I don't know if I would say the word lucky, but I've had the opportunity to bring on a lot of partners, so a lot of agencies and companies that I personally knew. And a lot of the reasons why I was able to bring them on as a partner is because I knew that what HubSpot does and how we worked aligns really, really well with their objectives and their goals as a company. And I think in order to have the right fit partner, as we're calling it and phrasing it, it's got to be mutually beneficial. And, if HubSpot, for using HubSpot as an example, if I bring on a new partner, I want to make sure that our software and what we do is going to elevate what our partners do. And it allows them to deliver their services maybe a little easier, a little better. Um, Puts them in a position where they're empowered because of that. So I think, when it comes to finding the right partner and finding that right fit, it depends on which side of the equation you're on. Now, HubSpot, we could be a great, resource for any partner out there, but if we're not furthering your goals and your mission as a company, then it's probably not the right fit partner. So I think just picking, to the point that you made already, is picking folks or picking companies that align with where you want to go and that help put you in that best possible light.
Yeah, I was spent some time at a company that was very, very channel focused, and we had to really rethink um, that go to market because we were essentially paying all partners, all resellers the same, even
Yeah,
though the value that they were bringing was not equitable. So
yeah,
we really had to think through who are the high value that are really delivering and we're most aligned with. So we
yeah,
had to do a revamp of that. So yeah,
yeah.
rewarding people was super important. So easy to work with. So determining before, I guess before we go to setting goals, it's the messaging and the positioning
Mhm.
and what are we actually going to say together? What's the value that we're going to bring? So
Yeah.
how do you, I mean, obviously maybe setting a budget as part of that, but you know, is it how do you agree on what you're going to be pitching? Maybe it's obvious because it's like it's HubSpot, but maybe there's components that you break out of that because of who that partner is.
Yeah, well, and I've seen it. So as far as what are we going to be pitching, I've seen where some partners take the, hey, we're a HubSpot expert, we're a HubSpot advisor, and HubSpot's kind of I would say the focal point of the tactical piece, and then the partner comes in as the one that is the expert that can help execute on all the tactical elements. I've also seen where I had great success with a former partner where their program they built and their deliverable, so like their package deal, if you will, that was the highlight. HubSpot happened to be mixed into that pretty heavily, but the focus was more on the end deliverable. So I think it really boils down to, kind of goes back to that, the relational end of it, and knowing that whether the software or whatever, the HubSpot, or replace it with any other software, or the partner's deliverable, whichever one is going to be the focus, knowing that it's really geared around the ultimate deliverable to the customer, I think really plays into knowing where the right pitch would come in, or the right content. So it goes back to mutually beneficial and agreeing on where do we want to go with this. And there's multiple different routes you can do it. As long as both sides align, I think you can do it really, really well.
Yeah. And I mean, as you would do with any campaign, you would want to set the goals, what are the KPIs, and agree on those in advance. So, um, any that, I mean, obviously, sometimes it is awareness, right? And it may not be revenue for one. Maybe it's revenue for one and awareness for another. Maybe those goals aren't exactly the same for the partners. But clearly, when they're aligned, you're going to be more successful.
Yeah, and I think with the setting of the goals, I think you hit it perfect, is you need to align those before you dive into anything. So having your goals set before you like push anything out to the buying public is such a vital piece of what do we actually want to get out of this? Who's our target audience? How many people are we reaching out to? What avenues are we doing it? Um, a lot of times I think mutually beneficial doesn't necessarily have to be revenue for both sides. To your point, it could be revenue and awareness, where, EMA and HubSpot, for example, we could be pushing something out, this webinar, for example, or anything of this nature, where it could be a really great just planting of seeds of having conversations. And the ultimate goal is that we open doors and then we cultivate. And when it's the same thing in sales, same thing in, anything I've taken an approach to is, if it's not mutually beneficial and there's not a win-win at the end, then we've planted awareness, we've had great conversations, but that's the ultimate goal, is to get to a point throughout setting of the goals where that awareness and ultimate long-term engagement comes from.
Yeah. The I think sort of like the measurement, I know in execution, we've obviously got, you're planning, you're building, you're launching, you're running. And then when you get to testing, I guess that really then starts playing into the measurement of that too,
Yeah.
and criticality of that. And I know we're going to get deeper into that, but maybe we can touch on that too.
Yeah, I think, the execute, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, because if we, find the partner, agree on topic, set goals, we plan it, but we don't execute, then you've missed the ball completely. But
Yeah.
I think the measure end of it, I think it boils back to the goals and what are we trying to get out of it. And so depending on what the activity is, depending on what the campaign is, that's going to determine what the measurement standpoint comes from. And so if it's engagement, is it impressions? Is it attendees? Is it ultimately revenue? Ultimately, I think every partnership really revolves around how do we generate revenue together, and best serve our customers. So I think if you get all of those pieces we have in measure right, the revenue end of it, because we're doing it for the right reasons, I think the revenue end is going to follow suit, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this slide is like, where to start, things you should be doing.
Mhm.
Maybe, and no need to name names here, Justin, but like what maybe we talk about some things not to do, some gotchas and traps to avoid as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I've been around the partner world for a while now and started a partner program from scratch. If I think one of the biggest keys is if you're not mutually aligned on what your ultimate end goals are and how you're going to get there together as a partner. Being willing and knowing when to kind of back away or step away from a partnership if it's really one-sided is a big key. I've had times where I'm running things with partners and they're kind of going rogue, and it's like we laid out, we agreed on topic, we set goals, we had a plan to execute, and then that's where it kind of went off the rails. And knowing when to, push back, call it, and again, it boils back to the mutually beneficial piece. So I think the biggest trap to avoid is making sure that you are really aligned on what the ultimate end outcome is, and that both sides are there to win together. And if it's not that, then you've got to have some really, I think, just intentional conversations around that.
Yeah, I think sort of communication is really, really important when the two sides, if you've got marketing teams that are talking, but to the exclusion of maybe a sales team, for example, who maybe
Yeah.
have to go execute and do that. So kind of making sure that everyone is aligned and is aware is critical. And I've seen a number of instances where it's been a great campaign, but it sort of died on the vine because it hasn't had the
Yeah.
buy-in from the people that are actually going to be pushing it out, which is often the sales team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly we want to know as partners whether we're hitting agreed upon goals. So the visibility into data and measurement is clean and imperative, from engagement rates, lead generation conversion rates. So I'd like you to get into those, Justin, but maybe you could start with attribution, as that's the one that really jumps out on the page for me. It seems like a key element.
Yeah, I think that HubSpot, for example, we've done a really, really good job of, I think we've got one of the better defined partner programs that I've seen. And really, it's set up in a way to make sure that our partners get the full credit of what they should be getting, what they deserve, what they've earned. And so having revenue growth where you can attribute it back to the partner and the co-marketing efforts, knowing, like, having trackability into where somebody came from, having, to, I guess, give a little under the hood view of HubSpot. Like, if you go to create a shared deal, you create a shared deal, there's a proof of involvement link that's tied to it, that's signed off by the customer buying, saying, I'm working with this partner. So, EMA creates a deal, there's a proof of involvement link, and it's really cut and dry as to where the credit goes. I've been around other partner programs where it's a little bit blurry and a little foggy as to how you attribute credit for revenue growth. And I think that ultimately can drive wedges, and it creates a lot of confusion. I think one of the biggest keys in measuring success is having it where it's a really simple makes understand.
Here I got a bit glitchy there, Justin. I think that was my connection. So, obviously there's the platforms and visibility into the data too, and I know you've touched on that before. What about when it comes to like meetings? So like check-ins and meetings. So I've found when there's been a QBR, for example, quarterly business review, that's been like a really good
Yeah.
sort of like get together of maybe, I don't want to say execs, but the team and others, like key stakeholders. But then it's like, you're meeting every week, every 2 weeks, every month, like how's that working for you at HubSpot, and what would be some recommendations around that?
I think one of the biggest keys I learned this very quickly starting at HubSpot. One of the biggest keys is constant communication with partners. So in a dream world, I would have a weekly standing call with every single partner in my partner book. And each week would be a different topic that we would focus on. So one week it might be, lead generation. It might be what deals are they working on. The next week it's around renewals and, who's coming up for renewal and things like that. And then continue to just kind of work through it. Because I think communication is the biggest key, but like having a QBR We call it a MAP call, so a mutual action plan call, where I love them personally because the first column in it is what are your goals? And so I always encourage my partners, like, tell me your goals outside, if HubSpot's part of it, let's talk about it. But tell me your overarching goals, because I want to be a catalyst for what you do and how you do it. And then we go into the why is it important? How are we going to close the gap and how do we measure it? And I think just verbalizing in a QBR call or a MAP call, if you will, verbalizing where we want to get to and having that common goal in place for the partnership allows us to work in conjunction to get there. Where if I think where a lot of partnerships can go off the rails is like, if I have certain goals for you as a partner and I don't articulate those and we don't agree to them, but then I still try and hold you accountable to them, like that's not going to work well at all. And vice versa, if you've got goals and I'm like, well, those don't align with my goals, so I don't really care, that becomes a big issue as well. So I think having those QBR calls, having a cadence laid out where we can build a foundation to go from and grow from is the biggest key to a partnership in any way.
Yeah, we haven't touched on sort of tools and techniques, but maybe you can, because one of the things that really resonated with me was when you talked about partnerships should be fact-based versus emotionally driven.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe you could talk a bit more, because that seems like very important.
Yeah, and that boils back. I think we were talking about that on tools and techniques and, having reporting and analysis. We've got so many reports we can pull internally at HubSpot and so many reports that are available for our partners in their portal within HubSpot, where you should never jump. The thing I love is we should never jump on a call together where there's a misalignment on number of clients, activities, things that are happening, because all of those are tracked. And so I think partnerships, there's going to be obviously an emotional aspect of it because we have buy-in, we're excited about it, things of that nature. But when it comes to measuring success, it should be 100% fact-based. And it should be something where, in HubSpot, I can go pull reports on any partner I work with at any time. We can look at, what have they sold in the last 12 months? Who are they working with? What are they managing? How many deals have they created? What leads do they have? And it's all just factual information that's available to both sides. And I think that's another key is if it's going to be based on facts, those facts have to be available to both sides to be able to align. And then if the reporting and the facts aren't lining up where we want them, then it becomes, what levers do we pull to maybe shift our focus and, A/B test things and figure out how do we get to where we really want to get to. But I think if you measure success on, I feel like I'm getting these results, it becomes way too objective and it's not, it's emotionally driven versus fact-based.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. There, before we get to QA, I like to, you know, think about sort of like the takeaways, what I call the golden nuggets. So, for the audience today, what are not like exhaustive list, maybe what are like the one or two key takeaways that our audience should be taking away
Yeah.
about this?
I think one of the biggest ones for partners is aligning yourself with companies that will help further your mission as a company and help you get to where you want to get to. Um, I think alignment on that is one of the biggest keys ever. And, if you're not aligned and it's way too transactional or way too one-sided, I think it's going to hinder your growth and capabilities as a company. I think the other piece is really evaluating what a partner program looks like. So, what does it look like from a revenue share perspective? What does it look like from a support perspective? If you become a partner of HubSpot, we put all partners through onboarding foundations. We do a ton of training. There's a ton of resources available to help partners level up. And I've also seen, the inverse of that, where there's partner programs where you sign on and then it's crickets and it's, you're kind of left to figure it out on your own. And I don't know that that's really, unless you've got the knowledge and the resources internally, that's a really tough road to go. So I think, yeah, those are probably the two big ones for me is just alignment on, can this company I want to partner with help me hit my goals and my mission? And then what do they do to support me as a partner?
Yeah. Yeah. We've got I know we're coming up against the half hour, Justin, but I've got a couple of questions that maybe we can go through. The the first one is actually for you, Justin, is about onboarding.
Yeah.
So, what are the keys to success in say the first, say 90 days?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things for, to again, kind of inside view of HubSpot is the first 90 days with a partner is critical. We've got our onboarding foundations that we work through. One of the big pieces there is just getting everything lined up as to how to, the basics of how to create a shared deal, how to create a confirmation link that you get out to your customers. We've automated that process, so it's kind of nice now. But also getting that first sale under your belt in the first 90 days and talking through that process, talking through how to execute on it, how to deliver and everything else. So I think the first 90 days is vital to a partnership. I've watched so many times where people sign on to something and then it's crickets for 90 days and you lose all kind of forward momentum that you had. And it's hard to get buy-in when there's not that level of, communication and tie together.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually a great question here from Jim, which is kind of a follow-up to this really, which is, how important is training to partner success?
I think
And
training,
is this something that you offer?
yeah, I think training is huge. I think we have, at HubSpot, we have a bunch of certifications you can get for all of the different hubs within HubSpot at zero cost. We have our whole HubSpot Academy. So partners have unlimited, it's the same resources we get trained on internally. So that's kind of cool. So you can have your team really level up. But I think training is one of the biggest keys. Like I'm doing a call next week with a partner where we're actually training on Content Hub and what's new about it. How does it fit? How to identify good fits with it? And if we're not, I mean, software constantly evolves, and if we're not evolving with it and learning as it grows, you kind of get behind the eight ball a little bit, and it makes it where, again, it's not that mutually beneficial piece if you're not training.
Yeah, that's good. I know we're out of time. We've actually put up our email addresses here. So if you'd like to reach out to Justin or myself, because we haven't got to your questions or you have questions that are going to come up as you think about what you've heard today, please do reach out. Justin, I want to thank you again for your time. You've been really generous with that, and your insights have been awesome. So thank you for you and
Yeah,
HubSpot for making the time today. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it was a pure joy to be here. So super excited.
Great.